Our third psalm this morning, and final psalm, is Psalm 100. If you'd like to follow along, it's on page 937 in your pew Bibles, the 100th psalm. Psalm 100, the psalmist writes, "Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful songs. Know that the Lord is God. It is he who made us, and we are his. We are his people, the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name, for the Lord is good, and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations." Now, it should be no surprise that based on what we learned concerning God's amazing grace toward us in Psalm 130 and in those hymns we sang, that once we realize what God has done, once we experience God's love and forgiveness, it should be no surprise that we're called to celebrate. We're called to live lives of joy. We're called to sing. That is not a surprising response considering how undeserved and unmerited God's grace is. We ought to want to rejoice. We ought to want to sing, as Psalm 100 instructs us. But what is surprising is how many Christians, people who have experienced God's forgiveness and love, will read Psalm 100 like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. Let me give you an example. "Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful songs." It's surprising that many Christians live lives not marked by a deep inner joy, gladness, and gratitude. Reading God's Word, praying, going to church, even volunteering in church is just something you do because it's something I ought to do, something I should do. It's that so many people outside the church and Christians inside the church think Christianity is all about duty. You have to fulfill your duty, your obligations. It's all about serving God. Now, of course, we are called to serve God. In verse 2, it says, "Worship the Lord with gladness." And the Hebrew word there for worship literally means serve, work, labor. Some translation of the Bible, including the English Standard Version, translates this verse, "Serve the Lord with gladness." So we are called to serve God. But I bring this up because it's very telling what God sees as our real work, our true duty that God desires from us. It's our worship. I mean, look at all these poetical parallels. Now, in ancient poetry, especially in the Psalms, the writer will say something, and then he'll say it again, and maybe say it again, in different words to help drive home one main point: repetition. When the psalmist wrote, "Serve the Lord with gladness," he then gave us 5 more phrases so that we could understand exactly what he meant when he says, "Serve the Lord with gladness." The first one is shout for joy to the Lord. Come before him with joyful songs, is second. Third is enter his gates with thanksgiving and his court with praise. Fourth, give thanks to him. And finally, fifth, praise his name. This is how we serve God. This is the work God desires from us. As the writer/pastor John Piper puts it, God is most glorified where he is most enjoyed. I love that. God is most glorified where he is most enjoyed. Now, don't get me wrong, I do believe that there can be times in our life where our spiritual tanks are running low. They're on E. And we should do these things like pray and read our Bibles and go to church. Even though we don't feel them, we ought to do them, even if we don't have that same joy and excitement. But it's important to remember that one of the true marks of a Christian is a deep joy and gratitude. It's not duty. Worshiping God is not something we have to do. It's something we ought to want to do. In fact, I would argue that worshiping because we have to is not really worship at all. Because worship is something we automatically do. It's something we enjoy doing. As Jesus said, where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. Whatever you treasure, whatever you value, your heart will already be there. Whatever you treasure, you already worship. Let me give you an example. When I lived in Boston, I took some of the kids from my youth group to the big Boston Red Sox victory parade when they won the 2007 World Series. Now, do you think that they had to set up speakers so that the crowd could hear this? All right, everybody. The players will be coming by on duck boats soon. When they arrive, please cheer for them. And please look like you really enjoy cheering for them. Thank you. Now, they did not have to do that, because I was there like 2 hours early and they were cheering the whole time. Most of the time they were saying Yankees suck. But that's a different type of cheering, because those are Red Sox fans, all right? But no one had to tell them to cheer. They were just cheering the whole time. And then I'll tell you, when they finally arrived, oh my gosh, the place was insane. It was crazy. Now, why was that? Why were these people just cheering and they didn't have to be told to cheer? They were just doing it. Well, it's because they knew this team. They followed all the games. They had discussed and talked about this team on car trips and over meals. They went to the games. They experienced the magic of this team. They had invested themselves in the team. And win or lose, they had come to treasure them in their hearts. And whatever we treasure, that is what we worship. Now, how do we come to treasure God more in our hearts? I think it's very simple. The more we know of God, the more we follow God, the more we think about and talk about Him, the more we experience Him, the more we dedicate ourselves to and invest ourselves in God, the more we will treasure Him. And whatever we treasure, we worship. The psalmist knows this. This is why the psalmist structured his psalm the way he did. Notice that verses 1 and 2, he instructs us to shout for joy, to worship God with gladness, to sing with joy to God. And then he gives us the reason to do that. The motivation for this praise is found in verse 3. He says, "Know that the Lord is God. It is He who made us, and we are His people, the sheep of His pasture." We ought to do this because we have to worship and shout and sing for joy because He is our Creator, and He is in control. The more we realize that God is God and that He is the one who made us, that we are His and He takes care of us, the more we will treasure God, and whatever we treasure, we worship. And this pattern in the psalm repeats itself. In verse 4, the psalmist once again commands us to worship God by saying, "Enter His gates with thanksgiving. Go into His courts with praise. Give thanks to Him. Bless His name." And again, immediately following that, the psalmist gives us the reason to do that. The motivation for this worship is in verse 5. "Because for the Lord is good. His unfailing love continues forever, and His faithfulness continues to each generation." So the psalmist knows the more we realize how good God is, the more we experience His unfailing love and faithfulness toward us, the more we will treasure God, and naturally we will worship Him. Because whatever we treasure, that's what we worship. Honestly, I think that what keeps our hearts from truly treasuring God, from naturally worshiping Him, is that we don't believe or realize that God really is in that much control. That God really does love us and is that good towards us. Frankly, what we do, I think, is we minimize who God is and what He's done. And then on top of that, we make things worse by maximizing who we are and what we do. And that's a recipe for disaster. That is how you keep from treasuring God in your hearts. The more we think that we're the stuff, and how wonderful we are, and we look at all of our own goodness, and we think of all the nice things that we do, the more we're treasuring ourselves and not God. And whatever we treasure, we worship. But as our understanding of our own sin grows, and our understanding of God's beauty and holiness grows, two things are going to happen. First, you're going to realize the size of the cosmic gulf between us and our sin and God and His holiness. That's the first thing that you'll realize more of. But second, you'll also realize how important the cross of Jesus Christ is. Jesus' death on the cross is what bridges that cosmic gulf between us and God. And so if we're not that bad, and God's not that great, it's only going to be, just a small separation. Therefore, the cross isn't going to be that big. Oh my goodness. If I'm on one side of the Atlantic with my sin, and God's on the other side of the Atlantic with His holiness, we need a cross that traverses the entire Atlantic Ocean. And that's a big cross. And that ought to cause us to appreciate what Jesus did for us even more. And when we do that, we begin to treasure God more, treasure what Jesus did for us. And whatever we treasure, we worship. Jesus put it like this. One time Jesus was having a meal, and a woman who had lived a very sinful life came, and she began to wash Jesus' feet with her tears. And she began to dry Jesus' feet with her own hair. And then she poured very expensive perfume on them. And of course, this actually kind of upset everybody else who was at dinner with Jesus. And Jesus recognized this, stopped, and asked them basically, there were two men who owed a moneylender money. One owed, we'll say, about $5,000. The other, $50. Now, the moneylender came and forgave both of them their debt. Then he said to the people at dinner with them, he said, who do you think loved him more? And they said, well, the one who owed $5,000, obviously. And then Jesus said this. He said, do you see this woman? I came into your house. You did not give me any water for my feet. But she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not give me a kiss, but this woman from the time I entered has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not put oil on my head, but she poured perfume on my feet. Therefore, I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven, for she loved much. But he who has been forgiven little loves little. You see, she had been forgiven much, and that caused her to love much. But someone who has been forgiven little loves little. Let me put it another way. I've said this example before. Let's say a friend of yours shows up at your house, and you're not there, so your friend waits for you. When you get there, your friend says, hey, while you're gone, someone you owe money to stopped by, but don't worry about it, I paid for it. It's all good. Now, you appreciate what your friend did, but you don't know how much to appreciate it. So, if it was just the postal carrier who came by, and you owed 50 cents for postage, and he paid for it, that's nice. But if it was the repo man came to get your boat or your car, and he paid that, oh wow, that's a little different. And what if it was the tax man cometh, and you owe 20 years of back taxes, and he paid in all the fines? That's a whole other thing altogether, isn't it? Your response is going to be increasing joy and jubilation and thanks. In fact, if it's a tax man that comes to you, you're probably on your knees just in tears thanking him for what he's done. You won't do that if you paid 50 cents for a stamp. Here's the point. If you want to truly do the things that are commanded in this psalm, Psalm 100, if you truly want to shout for joy to the Lord, worship the Lord with gladness, come before him with joyful songs, enter his presence with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name if you want to truly treasure God in your heart and worship him. Then what you need is a better understanding, a greater realization of the infinite, eternal bill that Jesus paid in full for your sins at the cross. The more we realize that, the more we're able to admit our brokenness to God, the more we realize how holy God is and righteous he is and how good, the more we will be blown away at Jesus Christ and what he's done for us, and for us great debtors at the cross. You see, the more our hope is built on Jesus, the more our faith rests in Jesus, the more authentic our worship will be, and the more naturally will flow out of us, because whatever we treasure, that is what we worship. So we need to begin treasuring what Jesus has done for us more and more, and we will begin worshiping him naturally more and more. So, as verse 2 of Psalm 100 instructs us, let us now come before him with joyful songs. So please turn in your hymnals to responsive reading. It's number 403. And then we'll also sing the 3 hymns that follow, all about the living hope that we have in Jesus Christ.